So Saturday, Alabama kicked off their 2022 season against Utah State, and it went about as well as you could have hoped as Alabama managed to pitch a shutout. And with the Texas Longhorns on the horizon, I think there's an inclination to look ahead, but before we can do that, as there's still plenty of time, we need to look back and see what takeaways there are to be had from Alabama's Week 1 matchup. Before we can, as always, y'all know the drill, I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Given the amount of freshmen that were able to contribute for the Crimson Tide, were you impressed by the freshmen's performance? And then let me know which players stood out to you, freshmen or not. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it, and we're on our push to 15,000 subscribers. I'd love to have you along with this awesome community. But having said all that, let's jump right into this, because this was a game I actually did a preview for but messed up. As I had all my notes in front of me, I had the score to the Utah State-UConn game and still somehow managed to say several times UConn had won the game, even though on my notes it was clear as day that Utah State had won. Why I said it, who knows, but I digress. Let's look ahead. What we saw on Saturday was really compelling from the Crimson Tide, and if you're someone who is looking for perfection Week 1, you're probably looking for the wrong things, as I don't think too many teams come out perfect Week 1. There were some deep shots that were missed, but I think that's to be expected when you have so many new faces in the wide receiver room, and yes, you can practice that. You can practice it throughout spring. You can practice it in fall. You can practice those in scrimmage. But inevitably, when the lights turn on Saturdays and you're against an opponent and it's live action, things are going to happen differently than they happen in scrimmages or practices or whatever have you, whatever mode you're doing. It's just a totally different look. So that's something that's going to develop as the season progresses because of all the new faces present in the wide receiver room. But let's start off there, talking about those wide receivers, because we saw Jermaine Burton and what he's going to be able to contribute for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and I think that's something Alabama fans need to be extremely excited about. Jermaine Burton looks to be a consistent force in that wide receiver room, someone that Bryce Young is able to depend on in sticky situations, and personally, I find that to be very compelling for Alabama's offense, because when we look at Jermaine Burton, he's the type of wide receiver that really excels at every aspect of the game. He runs good routes. He's got good hands. He's able to generate separation. So for him to be able to contribute in this Alabama offense, I find to be extremely positive. But he wasn't the only wide receiver that looked like he was set for a really, really fun year. Freshman Kobe Prentice set it on fire on Saturday and displayed why so many in the coaching staff and around the building have remained so high on him. Isaiah Bond was another one that came in and showed the speed and explosiveness he has, and he's a guy that once the season really starts going, once there's more reps to be had, I think he's someone that's going to continue how much he's able to contribute. The same can be said for Kendrick Law. Not only did I see Kendrick Law make plays, I saw him throw a few big blocks. And for a freshman wide receiver, you love to see that. And it actually made me think back to something Nick Saban had said in the offseason. Whenever Kendrick Law and Aaron Anderson first got there, and he was really impressed with both of them. And when he was talking about both of them, he was saying these were two individuals that, as young as they were, had an understanding of what it took to be successful, not only at their position, but within the offense as a whole. That made my ears perk up when Nick Saban said that, because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, the guy's having some real good reps at wide receiver, but he needs to learn X, Y, and Z. We consistently hear Nick Saban say that's a talented player, but they need to do what it takes to be successful. They need to learn the building blocks of success. It's really compelling when out the gate, that's the compliments he's laying at the feet of some of these freshmen. And Aaron Anderson is a name that, even though he didn't get to contribute because of injury, I think Tide fans need to remain excited about him, because once he's able to come back healthy, he's going to be a really fun player to watch within this offense. So the wide receiver position really confirmed something I've been saying for quite some time. There's a lot of talent in that room, but there's just not a ton of experience. And remember, Tyler Harrell wasn't able to contribute this week. He's going to be a real big deep threat for this offense and will allow them to take the top off of defenses at a higher rate than I think they're currently able to, because they do have speed. Kobe Prentice is a fast guy. Isaiah Bond is a track star. Aaron Anderson has speed. There's a lot to be excited about in the wide receiver room, but that wasn't the only part of the offense I thought was really interesting to watch, because the Alabama running back room is going to be one that I think is able to generate a lot of positivity for not only the offense, but the team as a whole. Jahmyr Gibbs looks the part. He looks as explosive as advertised, and there was actually a play in the game where they had both Jahmyr Gibbs and Jace McClellan on the field at the same time. And sign me up for more of that. And the answer to why is quite simple. Because both of those guys are individuals who excel traditionally as running backs, but are also really dangerous out the backfield catching the football. Whenever they're both on the field at the same time, the possibilities of what could happen, what the defense must account for, is endless, because those are two guys that are mismatches in the pass game, and any advantage you can give your offense is something you're incredibly excited about. I think that having both those guys on the field gives you an advantage. And that's not even to start talking about Bryce Young, who we know who Bryce Young is at this point. The former Heisman Trophy winner, one of the greatest players in college football, continues to prove how elite he is. He did it through the air, and he had 100 yards on the ground, and he didn't get to see much of the second half. He was out real early, and look, deservedly so. He'd already thrown the ball around. He'd already thrown for a bunch of touchdowns. He'd already run for a bunch of yards. There really wasn't anything else for Bryce Young to prove, and I actually love the fact that they got Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson some work. I think that's really good, and they were able to get a lot of new faces some work as well, which is going to be incredibly powerful for Alabama moving down the stretch. The offensive line is one that I don't know how much we can really take away from week one. There were moments where they weren't as solid as I think they would like, but it is still a group that's going to continue developing as the season goes on, as most offensive lines tend to do. Just like I said earlier with the deep shots, you can practice, you can scrimmage, have your defensive line go up against your offensive line, but until those games hit, until the lights turn on, it's just a little bit different. So the live action is going to be really positive for this Alabama offensive line. I remain high on what Eric Wolford will be able to do. They were talking about some new blocking schemes that with Jahmyr Gibbs and Bryce Young, I think will be really positive for Alabama's offense. The one surprising thing I had from this game was actually the lack of sacks from Alabama's defense, but that's not to say this defense wasn't impressive, because they absolutely were. The defense was stout from every single level. The defensive front held pat. They didn't allow anything in the rushing department, and they were able to maintain the line of scrimmage, if not completely rearrange where the line of scrimmage was. Dallas Turner and Will Anderson were Dallas Turner and Will Anderson, and even though they may not have had anything in the sack category, they still affected this game. Dallas Turner laid a huge hit, and Will Anderson continues to prove that as great and as transcendent he is in the passing game, he's just as good in the run stop game, and that's really, really impressive. Alabama had just about as good of a week one as you could have wanted. The wide receivers, though young, look really, really talented, and there's still a lot of names that are getting healthy that once they get back, man, it's going to be a ton of fun to watch. Christian Leary is someone who I think as the season progresses is only going to see more and more opportunity come his way. Trayshawn Holden, given the opportunity, was really able to capitalize, and he's someone that has got a great rapport with Bryce Young. Ja'Cory Brooks is Ja'Cory Brooks. He looks like the next great Alabama wide receiver. I can't wait to see what the season holds for him. But I think if you're asking me, I expected for the offense to be able to make some moves. The defense, I thought, looked really, really good, and especially the secondary. Every one of those dudes, when they came in, showed they can play football at a high level. So it's a great problem for Alabama to have. Who's going to be the two guys we turn to game in, game out, as all four of these dudes are proving they can play the position at a high level? And that's not even to start talking about the star position with Brian Branch, or the safeties with Helms and Battle, where I think Alabama fans are already very excited. So with Texas ahead, name me the matchups down in the comments you're most interested in this week. I'm going to be reaching out to some Texas Longhorn content creators so we can have a joint collaboration video and probably a live stream on Friday. That way Texas fans, Alabama fans, we can all come together and discuss the game, talk about the matchups we're looking forward to, and it should be a ton of fun. But before then, hop down in the comments, let me know what you would like to see. That's it. See ya.